Meantime, experts on Cuba we spoke to today say they're keeping a close eye on the action in Iran.
NBC6's Ari Otzer is live at FIU with that analysis.
Regardless of what happens next, Iranians all over the world are celebrating the death of the Ayatollah. By decapitating the Iranian regime, the joint Israeli and American operation in Iran might have ripple effects 90 miles away from Florida. Do the events in Iran, in your opinion, have any impact on what might happen in Cuba?
Yes, they do.
Sebastian Arcos leads the Institute for Cuban Studies at FIU.
And I think the message for the Cuban regime is, if we can do this to Iran, a country that is 10 times bigger than Cuba, has its own military industry on the other side of the planet. Imagine what we can do in Cuba.
Miami Congressman Carlos Jimenez agrees.
So I would recommend to the Cuban regime, go ahead and negotiate with President Trump now while you still have a chance.
Arcos thinks the Cuban public might rise up against the regime if there's a big enough catalyst.
And what's happened in Iran is a shock. What happened in Venezuela on January 3rd is a shock. And I think the Cubans will need a shock.
Arcos says the Cuban regime's legitimacy has never been lower with the Cuban public, which is why he thinks last week's deadly shootout between Cuban forces and a boat from Florida is part of a long Cuban tradition of fabricating military incursions.
When they need to reactivate Cuban nationalism and anti-imperialism, it has all the marks of a false flag operation by the Cuban regime.
For example, Arcos wonders why the Cubans listed as captured a man who was still in Florida. His theory is that a spy gave them names of men who were supposed to be on the boat, and their verification was just sloppy. From a legal perspective, the president of the Cuban-American Bar Association agrees with the professor. The Cuban government cannot be trusted.
It's a regime built on lies and on deceiving its own populace, so not surprising that we have very little faith in their official reports of what occurred.
From a lawyer's view, Jordi Martinez Cid, who you just saw there, says in any case, facts, of course, are paramount. But in this case, nobody can justify or nobody can tell if the Cuban forces were justified in shooting at that boat and killing 4 people when the Cubans are controlling the narrative and they have such a long history of lying, just like Russia, just like Iran, just like Hamas and every other despotic dictatorship. We're live at FIU. Ari Otzer, NBC6 News.
All right.